The Wonderful World of Darklords. The Peddler's Tales. Cruella De Vil. Enclosed, a luxurious ankle-length coat of white tiger fur, the white background crisp as new-fallen snow, the stripes black as ink. The cuffs are trimmed with snowy owlbear feathers, and matching trim on the collar rises to dramatically frame the wearer's face. My illustrious patron, I realize it is unusual for me to send you a report that does not pertain to a specific realm, but you recently informed me that a single grain of truth can provide useful knowledge. I do not know if the tale I am about to relate contains such a grain of truth, particularly as I am still uncertain as to what specific sorts of information you seek, but it is a curious tale that I thought would be of interest to you. When I arrived at Sunnyside, a peddler was sitting outside the inn, hawking wares that supposedly came from all corners of the mists. This is not an uncommon sight, as my patron doubtless knows, and I had every intention of passing right by a cart full of goods that were every bit as genuine as Mommy Fortuna's carnival. However, the peddler caught my attention.
Madam! Pardon me for intruding, but I have here an exotic item that speaks for itself, and its tale is one that you cannot miss.
The moment I saw the telltale black and white designs, I knew what outrageous claim I was about to hear. Is that supposed to be a genuine De Vil? Here at a peddler's cart?
Yes, and for only 100 gold pieces. I know, it's an obvious fake. This peddler, he's a liar, he's a fool, to betray his lie with a price like that. But I invite you to inspect it. It is authentic. It is as magnificent as any authentic De Vil, and though it is priced at a pittance, it was not bought cheap. The tale of obsession and depravity that brought this treasure to my hands would chill even a worldly woman such as yourself, but not enough to blind you to a bargain, I hope.
I studied the coat more closely. To this day, my brother keeps up with the fashions from Damonlu, and I've seen him poring over many a drawing of a De Vil original. This appeared authentic, and yet I'm interested but not convinced. You say there's a story? Tell me.
The tale begins in one of the great crowded cities of the West, beyond the Balanox. There, dynasties of wealth and power do not die peacefully. They rot away slowly, fouling everything around them. The De Vil family was one of the most debased, their estate reduced to a crumbling family manor dubbed Hell Hall for all the rumors of devil worship and worse that swirled around it. If devils did haunt that manor, even they must have blanched at what they saw during the childhood of the family's last daughter, the terror who would bring the De Vil name to fame and ruin by designing garments like this coat. But at the beginning, she was nothing but a girl, no spawn of hell, merely a child obsessed by her appetites and lethally indifferent to the innocent. And her name was Cruella.
Welcome to Wonderful World of Darklords. I'm Tom.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Kris. So you caught me in the middle of a deep breath. I didn't want to sound like I just ran in the door to the podcast. Oh, and I'm Kris, I'm here.
And we're discussing how to convert Disney movies to Ravenloft domains of dread, except sometimes we can't. And when that happens, we have the Peddler's Tales.
Today's story, Cruella De Vil.
Welcome to our first of what we hope will be a long-running series. That was our Hunchback co-host and podcasting associate Kris suggested this format, the Peddler's Tales, because there is a lot of great Disney material that we would like to include in the podcast, that we would like to Ravenloftize a bit, but it does not quite fit the very specific medium of converting it into a Ravenloft domain.
And just for those who didn't listen to this announcement in our Robin Hood episode, we're not going to be producing these in lieu of the domains like on a regular basis, but this time, this is our dog days of summer.
Yes.
And because our summer is ridiculously busy.
Pretty banana boats.
By this point, it's August, so we have overnighted in 3 different states and visited several others over the course of 3 weeks. Yeah, so it's banana boats. So this is short, or that's the goal. Look, that's the goal. So it's going to be short. Then we're going to go back to our regular episodes next month. So yeah, Kris, we've been talking, and this whole thing was your idea. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the genesis of this?
Sure. Well, it started with Home on the Range, and I want to emphasize...
As all good things.
Exactly. I want to make sure to say Home on the Range again and again, because if I do that, you can't edit it out. The fans will know, the listeners will know, this is about Home on the Range, and I really want to come back to do Home on the Range. And as I was thinking about how to make that happen, I thought, like, what you guys need on this feed is a format that is about things that can't really be domains or darklords, but can be fit into Ravenloft some way that allows you to just talk about the interesting part. Because some things, for example, Home on the Range, only have one good part, and it would be great if you could just like pull that out and podcast about that, and then throw the rest away. So
Home on the Range does deserve to be thrown away.
Dear listener, we are 20 minutes into Home on the Range.
No, we're about halfway
through Home on the Range at this point, and can confirm.
Yes, I was about to jump out the window when Almeida Slim's song happened, and then I fell off the couch laughing.
Yeah,
so, and that was the reaction I was supposed to have.
Right, it was good. Yeah. It was a good scene.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say I think Alameda Slim is a good villain. I mean, I don't want to pre-talk this too much for the inevitable Home on the Range episode, but I think he's a very strong antagonist. But yeah, so I think the idea was here, like, number one, this allows you to cover all that stuff. But number two, because within the fiction, like, Dee is getting it from this third party, these things don't necessarily have to be true, which is to say, like, canonical within this world you're building. It's just stories that people tell. So, like, if you like it, then it happened. And if you like some of it, then, like, some of it happened. But, like, the Peddler does not have to be exactly well-informed or honest about everything. So it's very low stakes. It's just like, here's some ideas about stuff that wouldn't fit in a regular episode.
If years from now we sit bolt upright in the middle of the night because we figured out how to make a wonderful, amazing domain out of Home on the Range. We're not, like, locked in. Like, no, we already did that in our fictional universe canon.
The domain of Home on the Range, your torment is that you're watching Home on the Range. Oh my gosh. Like, up until the Alameda Slim song, I thought it was worse than Chicken Little. Yeah. It was so bad.
That's very like the Yellow Sign, like the story where the GM prepping the domain is the Darklord, and like only at the end do they realize
the monster at the end of this book is
the Darklord being tormented in this domain is me.
And we were really happy that you came up with this format because we did have a couple of things that we wanted to do with, people who worked great as Ravenloft NPCs, but not as Darklords, like the one we're going to be talking about today, Cruella De Vil, because she doesn't really have a torment. Like, our four great qualities of a Darklord, right. She doesn't have any of them. Her own element of tragedy and relatability is who among us hasn't wanted to wear a coat made of puppies.
Like, you could make an act of ultimate darkness with you wanting to kill puppies and make them into a coat.
But she doesn't even do that.
No, yeah, exactly.
We've all worn a dog as a scarf, but like in a cute way, not like Cruella does.
Not like that. Don't make it weird, Cruella. And just, if this is a bonus one, so hopefully you have heard a regular episode before this, but we have those four qualities, and we wanted so badly to make Cruella work because she's amazing. We could think of a ton of cool story hooks to have her interacting with PCs, but we just could not make her work as a Darklord of a domain.
Plus, she's one of the iconic Disney villains. Like, she is on the cover of one of the villainous expansions because she has the iconic silhouette that everyone immediately recognizes and is all excited that Cruella De Vil is going to be in this game.
Right. I think there's a reason Disney keeps coming back to Cruella De Vil with remakes, with live-action remakes, with prequel live actions, with animated sequels. Like, she's so great. So we knew, like, really early on, we really wanted to make Cruella De Vil work. Does not really work as a Darklord, but now that we have the suggestion for a format of taking that and just having her as an NPC, as one of those mist wanderers they have in the Van Richten's Guide, and we have a format to do that regularly now, we sort of like, hey, Kris, this is a great idea, can we use it for our thing? yeah, Home on the Range, that's a great idea. How about Cruella first?
As long as you say it, I don't care about the tone. It's fine. Edits together, the same.
And it meant that we got to put off watching Home on the Range for longer.
So our concept of Cruella De Vil, and we'll have for the Patreon, there'll be the sort of Mist Wanderer write-up, and we have this character that her backstory is a little mysterious because there have been different iterations of the character, different versions of the canon. We don't want to definitively say one or the other is wrong or right because, they each have their fans. So what is known is at this point, kind of where our PCs might enter her orbit. She is this very wealthy, very privileged noble. She's seen as the heir to this kind of ancient, decayed House of Usher-esque noble line called the De Vils. And this is something worth talking about. In the book, they go into some of her like family stuff a little bit more. And Kris, why don't you tell the listener about that?
I think the important thing here, you mentioned like there are different iterations of the character, and I did try to watch Cruella. I didn't make it all the way, but
neither did we.
Without coming down on any particular version of the character as inferior or superior, I think the through line that like what's iconic is you have this like decadent character who is everything is crumbling, like the wealth seems to be gone, the property is in decay, but she still has status, she still has that swagger. And on a personal level, there is something so deeply wrong with Cruella. She is not like someone who's just like a decent person in a bad situation or just sort of like ignorant privilege. You can see where this is a person who ends her wealthy family, because there are all these little details about like how like she has a cat that she hates, but it's expensive, so she can't kill it, but she routinely kills its kittens. She was expelled from school in Cruella for fighting, in the book for drinking ink. She always needs it hotter. Like she can never be hot enough. And so like in any weather, the fire is sweltering. All that stuff to me indicates, yeah, like her backstory would be unclear, because whatever happened in her childhood, it was bad enough that her family spent a lot of its resources covering it up.
The always being cold thing, that actually works really well. We've mentioned, I think in the Hunchback episode, actually, the idea of the evil NPCs who just have failed a couple powers checks here and there, but aren't Darklords yet. And what's the thing in 5e? The like dark something or other, like,
dark gifts.
Dark gifts, yeah. It's kind of the way that it carried over into 5e, that you like have something that you can do that's like a gift to you from the dark powers, but then there's also some kind of curse they gave you too.
In if you're mostly familiar with Ravenloft from Curse of Strahd, this is kind of where they're getting the inspiration for, I believe it's pronounced Izek, the captain of the garden, Valaki, whatever it is. That one, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But this whole that he's kind of manifested this like demonic arm that lets him shoot fire. And it's just happening because he's such an evil person. So that's sort of that they're getting that concept that if you are an evil person in this setting, you will kind of, your externality, you'll start to reflect the monster within.
So you could do something with it. She, failed a powers check from killing some kind of sentient creature and skinning it.
You probably got lots of options.
Yeah. And so now she has to have fur in order to stay warm. Congratulations, Cruella. And like some other like gift that came along with it, something. But that's kind of the curse aspect of it, is now she's always cold because she needs something else's fur.
Yeah, and I think that the vagueness works for you in the backstory as we see going forward. Like I think it's going to help with what her current situation is too, because she's so much more powerful as a character who is just like deeply messed up for reasons you can't put your finger on. Like sometimes you're taken aback by how cruel and how evil someone is, not in like a way where you're afraid of them, just in like you suddenly realize that someone is an honest to God psychopath. And that's what I like. That's what I like from Cruella. And it can be vague. It's like, was she like, did she live on the street doing crime just because she loves to hurt people for a while, even though she's rich? Maybe. Like, what did she get expelled from school from exactly? We don't know, but something pretty bad that her family couldn't cover for her. It's better if we don't know. And in the same way, like, it's not like she's secretly a warlock or like something like that. She's just all messed up.
And there's a neat thing in the book as well, where they're talking about, if you ever wondered the estate being named Hell Hall, seems a little on the nose, even for the De Vil family. In the book, it's this whole, it's not, like, they didn't name it Hell Hall. It was this, like, sort of the De Vils built this giant estate, and the Baron or Count or whatever was living there, and all these weird rumors started, and there was a line about how, like, people wouldn't let their kids play, like, anywhere near there, and, just all these strange things happened, and eventually on a stormy night, a pitchfork-wielding mob attacked, and the guy, like, rode out in his carriage to escape them and just kind of, like, disappeared in a flash of lightning.
I'm apparently the only one who didn't read this book, and I'm missing out.
Yeah, no, it's something. It's something.
If you don't mind me like introing this next part, because you guys wrote this and I want to talk about it, if that's okay with you.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
One thing I like here, and this is a small detail that you added, but especially for Cruella as she appears in the Disney movie. I think there we're not sure how successful she is or how much how big a deal she is as a designer. But here you've specified that now in these places in Ravenloft, like Borca or like Mordant or in Damon Lou, where you would expect fashion to be a big deal, that she is a known quantity and she's she is a big designer. I think that's a great touch for the character because it connects her to those settings. It allows you to seed her ahead of time. Her name can be dropped before she appears. And I think it's going to make player characters think of her in a different way. It's this is someone who is a name NPC in the setting and is therefore, you have a little while before the PCs decide it's time to kill her. It's she's going to be involved in quests and stuff, before it's time to fight her, if it ever is. So I really like that. She's going to be the darling of powerful NPCs who you don't want to mess with. She's, even if she doesn't have money, that she's a favorite of the high society types.
Yeah. Yeah, she designed Ivana's dress last.
Yeah.
So,
That's the thing is, with Cruella, we're imagining how are the PCs. What do you do, Rachel? What do you do with it? And we're imagining the PCs, you're not going to necessarily have a boss fight with her specifically, but if you kind of give her this sort of position of status and privilege, then that gives us a lot of ways you can put the PCs in her path. And you could have these sort of heavily armed transients can be pulled into the orbit of this high class, super successful, famous fashion designer.
Yeah.
And it can be either in an antagonistic way, as she's an enemy you have to fight, or even as a boss, as a hiring, as a source of quests, as you mentioned, as we're going to get into in a little bit more later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really like that. And I like it ties her in also. If you were doing the other things you've talked about on the podcast, there's so many other domains where there's something sort of, there's something social, something community driven happening, where there's a community leader of some kind who, for that reason, is sort of not somebody you just fight. Cruella plugs into that so neatly that you could use her even across multiple other kind of Disney domains, or or put her in wherever. I mean, she would fit in with Lady Tremaine or anybody you care to stick her in with. I mean, she would be a really good fit for Princess and the Frog. That would be, she seems like she would fit in that world.
And we already put Madame Medusa there, and Madame Medusa is basically Cruella De Vil.
Yeah. And so we are imagining that in this version, Cruella, we're taking from obviously the Cruella prequel movie that none of us had the gumption. None of us quite was our collective cup of tea.
The trailers were so good.
Yeah, look, if you loved it, God bless you.
Yes.
It was not my cup of tea.
Please tell us what you loved about it. Sell us on it so we can watch it again through your eyes. Liking things is better than not liking things.
Yes, it is. And also, this is coming from the 2000s remakes with Glenn Close, where they kind of, I think, introduced that idea of Cruella as the very wealthy, very successful fashion designer, which makes sense. This sort of a way of, what do we know about her? Clothes, sophisticated taste, weird taste. It really makes sense to make her this fashion designer obsessed with things that are black and white.
And kind of one of the inspirations we're taking for Cruella is our daughter went through a huge Wild Kratts phase a while back. If you're not familiar with the show Wild Kratts, it's a kid's environmental show on PBS about how animals belong in the wild. And so they have these various villains who want to do various terrible things to animals, but in kind of, a kid-friendly way.
Right, yeah.
And so one of them is Danita Donata. And she's basically their version of, doing furs and alligator skin bags and stuff, but obviously she can't be full...
doing that,
believe Cruella was going to skin puppies. And it was just, wow. So she, does various freezing butterflies in cryostasis. The Wild Kratts can then free them, but first she wears them as earrings. And so kind of the idea of Cruella as this kind of Donita Donata figure where she is looking at all these magical creatures, and instead of seeing wonder and beauty and amazement, she sees furs, and she worships furs. She lives for furs.
You're probably going to hear that quote again.
So she is, the more strange and exotic and dangerous the animal, the better. Just that, it's, especially if it's black and white, but anything that she can do to kind of be getting this reputation of being this auteur who makes these truly fantastical, magical things that you cannot get from anywhere else. She's going for it.
And the nice thing here is in the sort of classic D&D bestiary, you have so many animals that are basically sentient. Either like are just fully sentient or are functionally sentient that would be horrified if they were turned into a dress, or even just like we have kind of an emotional connection to and would be horrified if they were turned into a dress. So like owlbears aren't sentient, but I think if someone like comes in with their owlbear cloak, a lot of D&D players are going to be a little squicked out by that.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to use her because again, it ties her into other D&D stuff, and also I think it hits. Like, you don't want to pull the rug out from under the players too much with this, but I think it's the sort of atrocity that you can slip by as, like, flavor or even, like, a joke, and then revisit the character later and be able to, like, not in a way of, pointing fingers at the characters, but just, like, get that past them, and then later, when Cruella does something that hits closer to home for you, you're like, oh, right. Like, we always knew this about her. Like, we didn't really care that she was, like, making earrings out of like ropers or whatever, but they have a culture and a language. Like she just went into like a community of living things and thinking beings and killed them for parts, and we just like that Cruella De Vil.
She's wacky.
Yeah.
Like we were fighting lizard folk anyway, and she paid a lot for their corpses, and we find out that she made them into boots, and that feels wrong. That feels wronger than us killing them for their money.
Yeah, and like it's nice when you don't. Like, sometimes you want to do the thing where it's like, are you the real monsters after all? But it is maybe like less manipulative and less cliche to be able to somewhat indict the characters like complicity in that, but also have them be able to draw a line. It's like, we're pretty bad, but we're not Cruella De Vil bad. Like there's really something wrong with her, and we're going to feel good taking her out.
Yeah, it's definitely, I like what you said about starting out with something as being like a little icky and weird and maybe even played for laughs in the background, and then escalating, because then it's not kind of, pulling the rug out from under the PCs that you thought that she was a saint and it turns out she's Cruella De Vil. Right, yeah. It's like, this is a like Scorpion and the whatever story. I don't remember what the Scorpion was writing on when it
Frog, I think.
Scorpion the Frog, yeah. You knew what she was and you picked her up, and it's right here. Like, it's,
Got distracted by how fabulous she was. How much the GM would vamp when she acted Cruella out.
I desperately want to hear your pitch for this. It says here, your idea is that she is a hunter, but also someone who kind of employs others. And I'm not going to give like an alternate take on that, but I'm interested in your thinking about it. How would you use her in that way?
Well, I'm mainly thinking when you do get to kind of the boss battle that just the way sort of D&D works, you want to have something where they have those kind of more physical, direct, hands-on skills, even if like they kind of play the role of sort of the manipulator. And so I'm imagining like I'm planning right now to say in the write-up, use the stat block of a scout or one of the ranger-esque things from the monster manual, just so she has those kind of skills that you would associate with kind of hunting and tracking and skinning and things like that. But functionally, we are all imagining her as much more of the sort of spider in the center of the web. Like, she has these minions, she has her Horaces and Jaspers, and they're the ones going out in the woods and clubbing owlbears over the head and things like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense, because you want it to be that if the PCs do manage to catch her alone, then it's not an anticlimax. But that can, not be her main mode. That way she does have the stats to back things up if the PCs take you by surprise. She is a boss fight, but it's not her big thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. The anticlimax is a real...
What do you think?
That's a real thing to consider, and that's it's worth giving her something. Like, you don't want it just to end. I wonder ideally she would be something like maybe the 4E warlord, maybe, where it's like you integrate into her in a mechanically central way that it's about other characters, it's about her support. Because I think there is something to the idea that she, like, when confronted, not that she folds, but like it defying her is kind of its own victory in a way. It's difficult because in 101 Dalmatians, they're dogs, so it's a different situation. But I would love to set up a conflict that kind of like what is it with Batman and the Joker sometimes, where it culminates in getting next to him. And at that point, you just punch him. Like, that's it. But you make sure that it's...
guy in makeup.
Yeah, you make sure that it's never an anticlimax getting to him. And I think the way you do that is by having Cruella escalate and escalate and escalate. Like, she's not the kind of villain who hides and, like, you know, you work your way through all her defenses and then you finally track her down. She's going to come at you full force. And I would love to see Cruella kind of self-destruct. And, like, that doesn't really argue against this mechanical implementation, but just in terms of, like, I wouldn't see this ending in a boss fight. I would see this ending in, like, a total meltdown that kind of, like, changes the whole situation around her. We'll talk later about her carriage, but I think that would be a great way to get to this.
That's a good point, yeah, because she treats her underlings so badly. So if you manage to kind of, like, take advantage of that wedge and get her to drive her underlings away, and then she's just a skinny lady in a fur coat, then, you know, you've also won the victory there. So.
And you could do a lot of the boss fight stuff via just, like, magical gear. You know, that's the nice thing. She could have a lot of jewelry. Yeah. Even just, you know, the fur coat could be, like, some kind of super enchanted armor, like, it has weapon attacks, things like that. So that is the nice thing with D&D, that you can take a skinny human and load them up with trinkets, and suddenly they are, like, a decent boss fight.
So, although, obviously, the main event is the employees, and you guys have a list here. I had to look up one of them. Please tell me about these people.
References. Hope you like references, listener, because you're about to get a bunch of them. This is a way we can work in a bunch of stuff.
You can tell, listener, by the way, that Kris is the one among us who's been podcasting for years, because he's the one just moving us along.
Yeah, right.
Well,
very well.
I get to go and get a refill. I just had a very weak thematic drink. I'm actually drinking a Dalmatian, which I finished and has.
Oh.
Yeah, it's perfect thematically, but it only has a mere shot of vodka in it. So.
Shame.
We are going to talk a little bit more about this when we get into the adventure section, but the nice thing with Cruella, and why I really wanted to do her on this format as an NPC, is she has these sort of 3 spheres that she can be a part of. And the one is the obvious, like, high society that we've been kind of talking about. But then you have the more wilderness, hunter, ranger, corrupted druid, like the legitimate puppy purchasing. Like, she's just sending people out that are hunting owlbears or lizard people or whatever, but are just doing what normal adventurers do. But then we also have the criminal, which is this underworld. If you have the idea of restrictions on animals, endangered species, animals are protected, laws against sentient beings, to turning sentient beings into parts, things like that, then she also needs to have kind of a foot in that criminal underworld, you know, endangered species smuggling, Tiger King type network. And that gives us so many options for NPCs. So I'm just going to rapid fire some references at you, listener. And first off, we obviously have Horace and Jasper. And we're imagining using thugs as the stat block for them. That's our big underworld connection. We have that with, they're watching the show What's My Crime, and they know the guy that's on it. So that kind of is they're very, like, connected. They know a lot of the criminal networks. They know whose door to knock on to get this particular, who's smuggling what, or who can get you counterfeit papers or whatever. They've got that kind of criminal background ability.
And yeah, Kris, you had a thought about their combat abilities also, so why don't you?
Yeah, and I was mentioning to you off mic that your response to that comment was exactly what I was going to say, which is just that the way that Horace and Jasper function in the movie, like, it's so important that the protagonists are dogs, because there's not really a question of just, like, defeating Horace and Jasper. It's not really about that. And I think there's a way to do that in D&D. Like, if I'm using Cruella for a low-level party, which I think is what I would do, I would have Horace and Jasper be like, they could be like trolls, but also like the worst thieves in the world. And they're like, everybody knows them because they've been caught a million times. Like, they've spent a lot of time in jail. They can't do anything, but they regenerate. They're extremely tough. They're extremely strong. And so they just keep coming back. And so they are like the bottom of the barrel, just like, they make sure that no one can physically attack Cruella, but they are just inviting PCs to trick them, trip them, get them stuck in things, make a noise in another room and then they go in. Like, anything but fighting them head on is almost bound to work. And I think it would feel really good as a low-level party to take on such powerful foes relative to you through trickery. And it would, at the same time, serve the GM's purpose of saying, all right, this is not going to be a fight. I've put these two here to make sure this is not a fight scene because you will lose the fight. But literally name any other way of exerting your will on another being, and it will work on Horace and Jasper.
And that puts the PCs in the role of being Dalmatian
puppies. That's great. That's such a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. It makes it so that they get to kind of scamper around and be tricky and all the stuff that we love about the movie.
Yes,
and like even just they get to be small but quick and clever, and have these big dumb doofuses who physically outmatch them. So it's even just naturally going to emulate those scenes in the movie. And it's a great idea.
Yeah, and to me, the regeneration is key because what that means is that you can put one over on them, like you can do physically, like, you can do what they do in the movie and like, kick them through a wall, you just do whatever to them, but they will come back. So if you beat them in combat, you then have to run.
Yeah.
The other one I definitely want to include is McLeach, who is the bad guy, if you remember, from Rescuers Down Under, because it's so perfect. He is your evil ranger. He wants to get the Golden Eagle because he's that kind of bad, nature-hating, just kills animals, hunts animals, destroys the environment with his big truck. So if we're talking about Cruella having these employees that are sort of evil rangers, we've already got one in Disney canon, and that's a way to work in Rescuers Down Under.
Mm-hmm.
And then this final one is a bit of a stretch, but I really would love to make it
I love
work.
this one. And
All right, go ahead.
We teased him in Last Unicorn.
Yes, we did.
So, and that would be Dr. Terminus from Pete's Dragon.
Pete's Dragon,
with his
baby!
traveling snake oil show where he wants to, find the dragon and dragons can clear up your skin, all that other stuff. So he's a con artist, he's a quack alchemist, he's a druid doing his quack alchemy things. He brews bizarre concoctions from the parts of the magical creatures. Some of them actually do things, some of them don't, but he can show you that it came from magical creatures because he's got, the various parts of them mounted on his walls. So there's a lot of them that Cruella doesn't use. She'll take the fur and then... She doesn't
need the liver or whatever.
Yeah, she doesn't need the liver or the eyeballs or whatever, and so she gives that to Dr. Terminus and he can have his bizarre potions that he's selling.
And this is especially great, not just because it's a super obscure reference and we're proud of ourselves, but because this
the prophets come rolling in.
Can be your kind of in to then bringing in Cruella as an NPC. Of this guy's like the much more low level, but he could be part of her network and working for her. And just the idea of this like traveling medicine peddler druid who wants to like get these magical animals and make them into aphrodisiacs and stuff is just delightful. A great sleazy villain to fight. And you fight him, he's kind of low level, but then you kind of get that he's part of this bigger network that's doing this bad thing. So that can be the thing that kind of leads you then into Cruella. Especially if you're sort of more in the isolated, you're in the random village of the week, and then this like medicine peddler rolls in. And you're like, we have to go to the big city, take out his boss.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that if you were to use this as an overarching plot to string together a few of these different like Disney villains and domains, that then gives you a way to interface with some of the like animal in peril stories from Disney that don't naturally lend themselves to Ravenloft, so that you could do like, a Dumbo or something like that, or, whatever. Ooh. If there's an animal in trouble, that fits naturally into like people who are finding and abusing exceptional animals for profit.
Don't take Dumbo's ears, Dr. Terminus, you son of a biscuit.
Oh man, I never think about Dumbo. Of course, they give you flight. You could get a flying talisman.
Hard defense.
It's brilliant.
But other than that, yes, quite a score.
So those are...
we got to talk about this car. We got to talk about this.
No, yeah, let's do that. We hit the 30. We hit the 30-minute, but go ahead. Let's do the car, and we'll move on to part 2.
Yeah. Listeners, I don't think we mentioned this at the beginning. We wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be a 2-hour episode because these were supposed to be little quick bites. So we have a literal timer going in the background.
We've gone over, but
only by a little bit.
But one thing we wanted to include was Cruella's car. It's such an important part of her. It's so distinctive. So many of the kind of iconic shots of her are in the car glaring. The car has the great little angry face with the headlights. And even just like, it so fits her personality, this sort of like reckless driver. The kind of the anger, the power, the impatience, the recklessness. It's such a good expression of who she is as a character. We had to include it some way. And Kris, you thought of an excellent way to work that into a automobile-free D&D setting.
This is the thought. This is the pitch. So what we have is like what appears to be a coach pulled by like the finest Novavasan horses, but they are the remains of those horses stretched over this like animated construct frame. She literally like bought the most expensive horses and killed them so that she could dress up constructs as them just for fashion. They are faster and tougher than regular horses, but if she pushes them too hard, then like the hides start to split and like the parts start to fall off and the apparatus underneath is revealed. And that's what actually pulls this coach, right? So she is that way. She can go to like the high society stuff. You get the duality of Cruella's car, which is that it's nice, but it has this like her, the engine inside of it is this like overwrought, self-destructive, evil thing. Like as she gets under more stress, everything falls apart. And that way she can like drive the horses recklessly. And Katrina had the idea that it needs to be fueled by something that you put in their mouths. And I was thinking it would be cool if you like hold their upper teeth and their head goes all the way back over. And then you pour like the fuel down their throats.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they go,
like the reindeer from Santa Claus.
Like the reindeer from Santa Claus, yes.
Oh, Chris, you know they're Novavasan horses. I'm so proud of you.
Nice.
My little player's all grown up.
Mm-hmm. Yep, had to do a thing in Novavasa.
These guys like them, their horses.
They sure do.
So one last part of that first Mist Wanderer write-up, talking about the Mist Wanderer themselves, is we have those role-playing traits. We have the role-playing trait, the ideal, the bond, and the flaw. Those are in the form of quotes. And so, of course, we want to provide you with quotes as well. Not that I think you need much help role-playing Cruella De Vil if you've seen 101 Dalmatians. But for the purpose of our craft, we want to do this properly. So I've picked out a couple of quotes. Some of them I have very strong sense of that they're either A, going to be in the write-up, and B, possibly right where they're going to be in the write-up. There's one Rachel already did, you can probably guess is going to be significant. Others just, I think, are good moments expressing her character. So, this is when some of them are a bit situational. It's always the tricky thing with these actual quotes from movies, not quotes we make up because we're writers.
Yeah.
So, this is when she's trying to buy the puppies originally. Come now, I'm being more than generous. Blast this pen! And then, of course, you idiots! You fools! You imbeciles! Third, I have, my only true love, darling. I live for furs. I worship furs.
Sorry, tickle in my throat.
Yeah.
That is the only thing she cares about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's her only true love.
Yeah, the relationship that matters to her. Her only true love.
I feel, maybe, yeah, I don't think anything else can possibly be her bond.
You all right with that, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because the only other meaningful connection she has to others is kind of like her impatience with and like kind of low-key hatred of her underlings, but I don't think she's invested in them, so it's not a good bond.
No.
Like, that's her attitude, and that could be like a role-playing trait or whatever, but yeah, interchangeable for her, I think.
And this is part of that same scene where she's trying to buy the puppies originally. Oh, well, in that case, I'll take them all. The whole litter. Just name your price, dear. And I like that as Cruella being nice. That's like Cruella's sort of putting her best foot forward. That's her and her best behavior, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Then this one, I really think I have a very strong sense of this one. I'm through with all of you. I'll get even. Just wait. You'll be sorry. You fools. You idiots.
That's when they refuse to sell her.
That's when they refuse to sell the puppies, yeah. That I really think that would be a good candidate for flaw. Because it's not just the temper. It's the wounded pride. 'Cause if you think about it, like, she had, 84 legitimately purchased puppies. She probably could have found 15 other Dalmatians for sale at pet stores. But this whole thing unravels. She maybe goes to prison because she wanted those puppies. Because Roger said no to her. Roger stood up to her and told her to leave the house. And she's like, no, I'm gonna get you back. You wounded my pride. So I'm gonna do this incredibly stupidly, unnecessarily dangerous thing. Because I'm gonna get even.
Yeah, agree 100%. I think that's like, and the way that it reminds me of, what is it, like, they say it's like a test for being like a psychopath or a sociopath or something, the one I'm talking about, the one where it's like, yeah, the thing about like the funeral, whatever. I think that like, that level of like, you wouldn't consider that someone would react in this way to something so small, but to her it's just all the same. That is such a distinctive thing of Cruella. Her overreaction and the fact that she doesn't even she does not hesitate to put in all her chips on the smallest thing.
Yeah.
Because someone upset her.
Yes. And I also like with that one, you get the hair trigger temper because, we've got, like, Maleficent is a ridiculously petty and vindictive villain also, but she doesn't completely lose her ever-loving mind.
Right.
She's cool and controlled the entire time. She doesn't scream that they're fools and imbeciles. And, Cruella is not that. She's no Maleficent.
So this is when she comes in, just because it's, on the Disney Villainous cover. It's the Disney Villainous expansion name. Miserable darling, as usual. Perfectly wretched.
I love that, but I don't know where it would go.
But
I love it.
little flavor for the listener. I don't care how you kill the little beast, but do it, and do it now! Now listen, you idiots. I'll be back first thing in the morning, and the job better be done, or I'll call the police. Do you understand? Oh, no, you don't. We'll find the little mongrels if it takes till next Christmas. Now get going, and watch your driving, you imbeciles.
There's some common DNA here. I think if we just pare these these quotes down to "you imbeciles," I think that that covers a lot of ground.
Yeah. There's so much of that going on.
I do have the one that's just "you idiots, you fools, you imbeciles."
Yeah, role-playing trait.
And I mean, it's very situationally specific, but I had to include the scene where she's just, sweet, simple Anita. I know, this horrid little house is your dream castle, and poor Roger is your bold and fearless Sir Galahad.
Honestly, I really like that for trait, because she's so... Alright, this is a PG-rated podcast, but it's the only word that she's such a...
Yeah.
We're gonna bleep that, but it's true. And just she's
a word she just said.
Just mean girly.
So mean.
And, she's a witch. That's what I said. That's what we bleeped. That she's a witch.
And like it's the same thing. She's like putting her best foot forward. She's like trying to charm them. This is Cruella on her best behavior, and she's just awful.
And just, I have had frenemies. So listeners, I'm sure you have had frenemies. This is such a great freneminess. I love this. I love it so much.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's such an important part of Cruella, and like without getting into slamming the movie Cruella. That was a part of it that didn't sit right for me, is the fact that there's a part of this where they kind of try to give her this Cinderella story where she's like working as, she's like cleaning up this place. And it's important to Cruella. It's not just that she's mean. It's that she's oblivious. Like she doesn't understand what it is to have a regular life. And she doesn't think twice about the casual like cruelty and condescension that she shows toward people. I think it's so important that she doesn't have life experience that would teach her that, because she's awful, but she's also ignorant.
Yeah.
In the book, there's an earlier scene where she kind of finds out they're pregnant before she tries to buy them. And she comes in, they've like made this date that she's going to come over, and she leaves, and Roger's like, you were really friends with her at school? And Anita's like, no, I hate, like, she made my life hell. It's like, no, she tormented me the entire time. And you're like, you don't have that in the movie, but you totally get that this was like Anita's bully. That they were not, in fact, friends at school.
Yeah. So whatever way we need to do that, I don't know if that actual quote will do it, but yeah, that is a key thing about her for sure.
I put it tentatively down for trait because we're all just like, we must have this. Yes. And once again, I can see this being how the PCs interact with her.
Yeah, that she's negging them constantly.
She's negging them and maybe I think I just gotta like put it in as is and just kind of trust the listener.
Yeah.
Like, no, don't literally say Roger and Anita. Like, take the spirit of the quote for your role playing this character. And then, yes, I must say, such perfectly beautiful coats. And then finally, so they thought they could outwit Cruella, Jasper, Horace. Here's their tracks heading straight for the village. I really think there's a strong candidate with this, so they thought they could outwit Cruella. What we have left is the ideal. And the problem is the ideal is also sort of, I live for furs, I worship furs. So...
Can you use a quote about Cruella from the song?
Ooh, what do you... there's no rules.
Yes.
Anarchy reigns. So what are you thinking?
I don't know the song by heart, but I'm gonna look it up. Because I think Roger is pretty pretty incisive And what do we have to fill in still?
Ideal.
Ideal.
Or we could switch something around if we needed to. I am planning to have a couple of quotes from the song in the write-up, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this now, like, it is just heaping abuse on Cruella, which is well-deserved, but not maybe super
psychologically
useful.
Insightful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. It's just, but yeah, she is like a spider waiting for the kill. You've seen her kind of eyes watching you from underneath a rock. She ought to be locked up. That should be somebody else's ideal.
Yes.
What about for the ideal, so they thought they could outwit Cruella? Like, not necessarily this stuff about Jasper and Horace, but that's so they thought they could outwit Cruella. So I think that's a very, that's a very useful telling quote of the sort of arrogance and the anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're in the area with these, because some of these are going to get shifted around, and it depends on how you're going to use it too. Like the Roger and Anita quote, honestly, it's so good that you could use it as a bond if you were going to give them to her as an in for the PCs. Like if you were going to have them be in her circle, like if you were actually, if they were the ones who, were like somehow in charge of like the winter wolves or whatever that Cruella has stolen that you need to go rescue, that would work. She would have that, like, because she does have a persistent relationship with Anita. But yeah, like I think all these are kind of pointing at the same place, and it's just a matter of kind of shuffling them. Because the first thing, that is great for Bond, but could equally be her ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, they thought they could outwit Cruella's. Yeah, because the problem is Cruella, like, for the most part, all she does is heap abuse on people.
Yeah, call people idiots, fools, imbeciles. Like, so many of these lines include her calling people imbeciles.
Oh, I'm looking at quotes now from the movie Cruella.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm Cruella, born brilliant, born bad, and a little bit mad. The thing about power that she says to the Baroness says, let me give you some advice. If you need to talk about power, you don't have it. And Cruella says, well, I don't have it, which is why I need to talk about it.
It's a good quote.
That's a good quote.
And it depends on how you want to portray the character, because I like that in the book she's like deep in debt. Like she has a wealthy lifestyle, but she is like at the end of her rope. Much to avenge, revenge, and destroy. I want to make art, Artie, and I want to make trouble.
If the ideal would be something about it's the whole like the making the furs and the fashion, so this art for her. This is something that she cares about, so that might be something with that. And once again, this is kind of because we're bringing in this whole sort of fashion designer thing. There's not a lot of support for that in the original dialogue for 101 Dalmatians.
From the very beginning, I've always made a statement. Not everyone appreciated that, but I wasn't for everyone.
Yeah, that could be something.
That could work.
Could be something. So let me write that. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Because then you even get the sort of her amorality. That's ideal. Okay, cool.
Yeah, all right.
That's very solid. And those Cruella fans out there, little something from us to you. Little peace offering.
His story had the ring of truth, in parts. It was consistent with what little I knew of the circles where Cruella De Vil made her name. If half his story was true, De Vil was more a monster than most of the creatures she skins to clothe the idle rich. However, I knew his story's climax was still to come, so I asked him what my patron must be asking as he reads this account. What of the coat, Peddler? Wasn't that the point of your story?
Ah, yes, I apologize. The coat. It is, as you may have noticed, sewn from the hide of an owl bear, which is an intelligent creature, as slavering monsters go. And unfortunately, local enemies of commerce have made it unlawful to profit from the sale of an intelligent being. Even a coat has more rights than a peddler, it seems. But the law is the law, and I can only sell you this coat for precisely what I paid, 100 gold pieces to a dimwit named Jasper, who pulled it from Cruella De Vil herself, little imagining its true worth. He was merely seeking his agreed-upon payment for an ill-fated scheme that left Cruella lying in the wreckage of her own excesses and left her criminal associates unpaid. It began when Cruella condescended to visit an old acquaintance of lesser means and found that the humble woman and her husband were in possession of 15 most striking cubs.
So the second part of the Mist Wanderer write-up is where you talk about adventures. How do you okay, that's a cool NPC, but what do you do with it? How do you have adventures with Cruella? And I think you've got, once again, we kind of touched on this already, you've got these kind of 3 spheres she can interact with: the high society, the underworld, or the kind of wilderness. And the great thing is she can be a bridge between any of those. Mm-hmm. So like if your players are a bunch of like nature, druids, rangers, things like that, then you kind of come into Cruella as an antagonist that way, but then you have to go get her through high society. You have to like go to the ball and hunt her and track her down and get into fancy dresses and things like that. Or if you're really hooked into the underworld, well, you have to go into the wilderness to find the source of these animals she's smuggling in. Or vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I think just really one of the things I like the most about this character is this kind of Venn diagram overlap of different areas PCs might be expert in that lets you then put them in these new situations. Mm-hmm. Or kind of, you've got your ranger, you've got your rogue. Together, they fight crime. And crime in this case is Cruella De Vil.
Yeah, another thing that suggests to me is, we were talking before about like how do you make the sort of the showdown with her satisfying. She's one of those characters who could be taken down by a revelation, which is a great way to use a villain like that. It's going to be, you're just running into a brick wall as long as you try to come at her straight ahead, because she has too much status, too much privilege. And if you're coming at her from the high society side, like she's the one who employs trolls. So like there's a level of asymmetrical warfare happening here. But there are things about her that if they were known, she would lose her backing.
Right.
And so you can do, the climax can be at the big party or whatever, you reveal Cruella's secret and she's in disgrace. And, you don't need to punch her out. Like she's done. I think that's equally satisfying. And it allows you to like skulk through all of her different social spheres, figuring that out. I love the fact that you would have to go through the woods and the sewers and the high society parties to figure out what's up with Cruella and how to expose her.
Yeah.
And the other thing I love about Cruella as an NPC is we've been mainly coming at her as a boss fight, as an antagonist, and we've mentioned this can be like the antagonist of a session or an adventure or a whole campaign. Mm-hmm. But the other great thing is, we touched on this a little bit, she can also work as a patron. Mm-hmm. That is, she can just be the weird, vampy, campy fashion designer patron that's hiring the PCs to do these kind of slightly ethically questionable jobs, and it's absolutely up to you as a GM if you want to like turn up the dial on that. Mm-hmm. If you want to be, actually, you're monsters. Or if you just want to have it be, it's just you're hunting these animals and it's like a little weird that she's making them into clothes. Mm-hmm. But she just kind of is this slightly shady, Mr. Johnson from Shadowrun quest giver that the PCs can get money from.
And I feel like you have to pull the trigger on that eventually, but if you don't want to put your PCs there, you could always have it be that they find out that she's sending other people to hunt for certain creatures, or like steal people's pets or whatever.
Not to jump ahead to another Disney movie, sort of do a Monsters, Inc., where, there's this like sleazy guys that are also working for her, maybe Horace and Jasper. Yeah. And she's having them do the really bad stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of that works great, and I think works for Ravenloft, where if you're playing characters who have to be to a certain degree inured to evil, and except like you can't fight every battle. I think Cruella would work great for that, and you may not like have this great moral awakening. She may not cross any line. It may just simply be a matter of leveling. Like it might be that she's a low level patron, and then at a certain point, the jobs are too small and your disgust for her is too great, and you're just like, you know what? We don't need you anymore. We do not need to put up with this. I think that would feel good.
It would be the great power fantasy of you don't have to listen to your boss anymore because now you learned Fireball. Or you got 2 attacks now, so forget this jerk.
So yeah, Tom has a list of various plot hooks here, but they basically boil down to either Cruella hires you to go get an animal, or somebody hires you to go rescue an animal from Cruella. Right. Or maybe you're going to the Grand Masquerade and you need clothes. You have to go to Cruella for an outfit.
You can approach her, too, with this high society thing. If you're doing the Grand Masquerade and you're like, we don't want to get disintegrated by Sidira, and like the only like guaranteed successful outfits are De Vil originals, so we've got to go kill some owlbears and she'll make us dresses.
Yeah, there's a note that you wrote too about using Hell Hall, as a dungeon, and I think that is another great way to use her. That is such an interesting location, such a natural dungeon, and especially if she's been a patron to the party before, it would be great to have this be like the usual meeting place and a place where you've done some things for her, then becomes a dungeon. Like, this is a place where you break in, this is a place where you attack, where you sneak past Horace and Jasper, because you kind of know the lay of the land, because this is, you've been on her side of it before. And I love the fact that it is like this crumbling opulence is so indicative of her character, and such a cool, any dungeon where you can like burst through the crumbling walls, that's a great time.
Yeah. And you've got kind of the expanding out with the puppies there in the movie, and expanding out. So you have like these basements, there were dungeons, and now there's all these like holding pens and taxidermy labs and like, sewing stations and things. And it's just, I always love when we find a natural dungeon in one of these Disney things. And that is just, that scene where the puppies are escaping from Horace and Jasper is practically a dungeon, like a dungeon crawl scene.
It's just you break into Hell Hall and you save the werewolves that she's captured because they make amazing coats that shift from fur to leather depending on the phase of the moon.
Or like they're big enough.
Yeah.
One thing I want to put in here, because it relates to how you use her in adventures and all that stuff. We were talking before about, because the protagonists in the movie are dogs, and so Horace and Jasper function as a different kind of antagonist than they would if you carried them straight over to Ravenloft. In the same way, I think the way that Cruella uses her car, the way that it gives her mobility, and how so much of the movie is about her, about the pursuit and about her being able to get places before them, that she's so much faster and it's so much easier for her to travel. I think if you could engineer that with her coach, if you could make it so that like with these horses, like they're tireless, they're fast, you really could create something here where it's like, we don't need to fight her so much as it's that like there's business in a couple of towns over, and she can get there a lot faster than we can. And so like, even if we get the animal that she was after and start taking it back to our quest giver, she's twice as fast overland as us. And so she's going to be hounding us at she's looking for us the whole way. Yeah. And then if she doesn't find us until the last minute, she can go ahead of us to the town and set a trap for us, so that it becomes about like outrunning her. And I think that giving her that level of speed, like, overland travel speed, as well as tactical speed, it creates a tense situation that is not combat to face off with her in, without having to kind of like pull the trigger on a fight scene, which I think, whether or not you want to do a big fight scene with Cruella by giving her, hunter abilities or magic items or something, you certainly don't want more than one. Whereas you can have her chase you all over Ravenloft, and I think that would be fun. Yeah.
And even that gives you the puppies being hunted in that sort of last third of the movie, and that's a great sequence, and it's really gripping, and it really would, it'd feel like a Cruella De Vil story. Like, that's the story we know Cruella De Vil from the most, so it would be very evoking that source material.
Yeah. Her going through the streets of, like, the way that she's looking in the windows, looking for the Dalmatians in the little town when she gets there, having her doing that in, like, one of the iconic cities or, like, towns of Ravenloft while the player characters are, trying to hide out from her, the contrast of them hiding out and her, like, she could just go wherever she wants, she has the status, she can just parade through the streets looking for them to, like, club them to death at her leisure. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the write-up there will be a couple of other plot hook suggestions, and then I also have some black and white animals, because you want to have if you want to do the full 101 Dalmatians, and then she's specifically after black and white animals. And there's a one in particular that I feel is worth mentioning, because I went on the internet and said, what are some like black and white animals in D&D? And someone mentioned there are white tigers. And, once again, can mark your bingo card for core generational reference. But when we hear white tigers, we think Siegfried and Roy. And the whole adventure just kind of appeared in my head of, like, you've got these two magicians, and they're very wealthy and successful, and they have their kind of, like, palatial estate private zoo of all the animals they use in their, like, magic acts. So that's basically your dungeon, is stealing Siegfried and Roy's white tigers from their, like, big gardened estate with all these, like, magical enchanted wild animals on it.
Also, if you're stealing the animals from these two people, then the first place that my brain goes is, no, you have Roger and Anita Siegfried and Roy. Just like, he's not a struggling composer, he's like a struggling animal trainer of some kind. And they've got their two white tigers, Pongo and Perdita, who have just had their litter of little tiger cubs.
Oh,
Cruella has kidnapped them.
This makes so much sense, because if he's like a bard or something and they're putting on like some kind of stage performance, then of course he's like writing a song about her because she's like the biggest villain he knows, and he wants her to be like the big, Yeah, it makes total sense.
And it could even work as like, either Siegfried or Roy like knew Cruella and she tried to buy the tiger cubs and they said no, and so she went out of her way to steal their cubs to like just as a kind of get you, walk in with the white tiger skin cloak at the next event. It's all right
so
there.
Cruella.
So Cruella. And so, there you go. If you wondered, are we going to bring in Siegfried and Roy into this story? The answer is yes.
Also, another thing I want to call attention to on Tom's list of animals here is zebra centaurs.
Yes, I mean, that's a zebra. That could be, I think, an excellent escalation if you have a couple of other black and white animals in kind of an increasingly uncomfortable situation, and then it's zebra centaurs. No. It has to be the centaurs. Regular zebras won't work.
No,
the texture isn't right.
Yeah. I think that element of like creatures that are very aesthetic, there's a nice synergy there, because if they're like very visually striking, the players are likely to like take an interest in them and think they're cool. It makes total sense for Cruella to be going after them, and D&D is not at all short of like, fantastical magical creatures. And like, whether you invent something like the zebra centaur, or it is like you have your snow owlbirds and that kind of stuff, like all that stuff, it's going to be very easy to confront the player characters with an animal that's like, it makes sense that a horrible person would want to make a coat out of this, but you really can't let that happen.
So you have Cruella as a character. You have a bunch of possible hooks for using her in your game as either an antagonist or an ally to the party or an employer of the party that becomes an antagonist. Hopefully you don't have PCs that are that big of a sociopath.
I have an idea. We're off. This is off script. Yeah. This is a plot hook.
Fire away.
Okay, go ahead.
Live, baby.
Someone wants to like get an animal back from Cruella, or like get secret like information on Cruella to destroy her, whatever it is. They have to polymorph you all into animals to sneak into her operation.
Oh, that's so good. I'm putting that on the...
Yes.
Add that to the chart. Then you get to be the Dalmatians.
Yes. If we can speak with animals, and you can participate in the Twilight Bark.
That would be the most fun to have PCs like, okay, there's this wizard or whatever. I'm going to turn you all into irresistibly like gorgeous animals to make, whatever out of. So have all the players just like, what does your character think of? Like, what is an animal here? And then just, turn them into this whole like motley collection of irresistibly beautiful animals. I think a lot of players would have fun with that.
I love that. That's fantastic.
So good. Thank you. That's perfect. If you want the full 100, if you just want to do the full 101 Dalmatians. Then you can just be polymorph. You can be animals. You can be Sergeant Tibbs and them.
Yeah, turn it into a spy adventure.
Thank you for that.
Codename Pongo.
Yes. It's our crossover with Bolt.
So, yes, then hopefully, I think this is a good start to our format for the Peddler's Tales. And once again, the wonderful thing is this gives us such a wide range of potential other things we can draw on that we can't make work in we're making a specific Ravenloft domain setting. So, Kris, thank you so much for that suggestion, that idea, that format. And thank you for being here and helping us with talk about Cruella De Vil and how great she is.
You're welcome. This has been so much fun. I'm so happy to be able to facilitate the future Home on the Range episode. I'm Kris Newton, and goodbye. Like, I'm not going to stop talking because Home on the Range is right in the middle of that sentence.
So, Kris, if our listeners want to find you and occasionally even find you talking about Home on the Range,
it's out there. It's Googleable.
Yeah. Where can they do that?
Well, let me focus on that. So I'm not. I don't think that I have mentioned Alameda Slim on my only current ongoing podcast, which is The Next Wrestling Fan, which is about NXT wrestling. It's like WWE's sort of developmental / indie, whatever. Anyway, that is the podcast I'm doing now. It's a good podcast. tragically short on Alameda Slim. Before
could being a yodeling cowboy in this day and age work as like a wrestler character?
I mean, sadly, Chikara is no longer with us. Otherwise, it would be an unqualified yes. But I think there still is a place for it. Yes. But yeah, if you want to check out the Next Wrestling Fan, that's around. You can look up the name. It's NXT. Don't spell out the word next. It's NXT, the NXT Wrestling Fan. That is a really fun podcast. Previously, I did the Gameable podcast where we talked about gaming possibilities for all the various Disney movies, including Home on the Range. So you can go check out the Gameable episode on Home on the Range. Really a testament to the way that podcasting as a hobby just keeps giving, because anyone can now listen to that episode, but I never have to watch Home on the Range ever again. And I've also talked about Alameda Slim as an honorable mention on Hard Choices, which is a podcast I'm often on. We did a Disney Villains episode, and so if you want to hear me, make a pitch for Alameda Slim, not only as a villain, not only as a man, but as a lover, then you can go to Hard Choices. It's a brief segment, but like
that's a heck of a hook right there. I mean, it's a pretty irresistible pitch.
Yeah.
Y'all did my boy Sean Yu so dirty in that one, though.
He you know what? He didn't show us much in Mulan. That's the thing. He was like one of those people who gets eliminated first on a reality show. And the people who know their work are like, oh, if only the first round had not been that stupid, like, make a dress out of garbage challenge.
I'm not going to go on a giant Her Choices related tangent on Mike, but I'm thinking it.
So yes, we also have, they're going to be the Miss Traveler write-up on the Patreon for this. And if you like how we adapted this, we have some other works we've done, adapting horror movies into D&D adventures, Ravenloft or non-Ravenloft, or setting neutral. And if you like the way we took this piece of children's media and adapted it into something, we also have some tips for doing spookier, more horror-themed gaming with younger players. And speaking of spooky younger people...
I have a picture book, Mother Ghost, Nursery Rhymes for Little Monsters. It's exactly what it sounds like. And you can also find some of my adult work on my website, www.rachelkohler.com. This is normally in our episodes where we'd say that this is where we rejoin our narrator and find out where she's going next, but we did that at the end of Robin Hood, so you all already know where she's going next. If you haven't listened to Robin Hood yet, go listen to it, and you'll find out where she's going next.
Thank you for bearing with us through our dog days of summer. We hope these kind of sample bonus episode projects were fun to listen to you, as they were fun for us to make. It was a nice kind of change of pace for us, doing something different.
And thank you very much for being patient with us as we had to change the format up so that we could still be getting you stuff while not having to do frantic recording in Alabama.
But next month on the 13th, we should be back to our regularly scheduled domain-centric, properly formatted script adventures of our narrator. Until next time, thank you for listening, and happy gaming.
I have enclosed the De Vil original coat that I purchased from the Peddler, as well as a receipt for 100 gold pieces and a transcription of his bizarre tale of 99 black and white cubs. Presumably, as my patron has requested anything that may be of value rather than providing a specific direction for my efforts, this will be seen as money well spent. Regards, D.
One wonders what the legal definition of intelligence is in these lands. Perhaps my little servant shall encounter an original De Vil made from the hide of a certain self-proclaimed hero from Elsaz. He would certainly make an excellent throw rug. No doubt this peddler's tale was highly embellished, as such narratives often are. Yet, the garment my little scholar sent me was indeed a genuine article. This gaudy bit of fur, combined with my knowledge of the De Vil bloodline, leads me to believe that this particular account was closer to the truth than fiction. Cruella is and always has been an amoral creature, driven by her own obsessions and ambitions. I have little use nor interest in what this fur fanatic deems as fashionable. However, I am intrigued by this peddler. The authenticity of their wares may indicate other, rarer items within their possession. I expect my servant to pay particular attention to any magical items within their cart, should she encounter them again.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening. Scorpion was the title of the Voyager episode. That's the only thing about it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Which they get that story wrong in the episode, by the way.
Oh no!
Oh wow, it's very.
That's
What
for you.
a very illustrative anecdote.
They probably had a Greek culture advisor on Voyager who gave them the inside scoop on how that fable goes. Just like they had a native culture advisor.
Okay, we can't go down there.
All right. Hit us up on Patreon if you want us to do talking about Voyager podcast.
Oh,
we'll do it for
you know
money.
what? Captain Janeway, yes.
Pay up and we'll do it. So,
The Wonderful World of Janeway.
Yeah, right.
All right. All right, anyway.
Yeah, God, no, stop.
We're on timer.
Okay,
We're on a literal
no time.
timer. Okay.